Arsenal crash out of the League Cup at the hands of Newcastle United. I didn't think necessarily we were going to overturn it. I did think Newcastle were favourites going into the game, but the nature of our performance and the way in which we were eliminated in the end has to be put down as incredibly disappointed. I'm delighted to say that Mike Stavrou is alongside me to try and break it all down. Mike, as you could probably tell there by the intro, there's no script today. There is no bullet points. There is no intro. It is literally just going to be one of pretty much raw emotion today, because I don't know about you, I'm feeling beaten up after what we watched last night.
Yeah, and it's hard to say that we didn't know it was coming after the first half, the first leg. We obviously shot ourselves in the foot massively, gave ourselves a huge task. And look, we don't have a good record at St. James's Park. That is clear to see. They're a bit of our bogey side, to be honest. Maybe like the Boltons of the previous era. There's just something, Eddie Howe has got our number. And it's interesting because a few years ago, I can't remember exactly the game, but there was a game where they kind of worked out how to stop us. And I remember saying on this pod, is that the kind of blueprint for it now? Like, if you double up on our wingers, do you effectively stunt us in attack? And I think that's kind of rung true for since then, really. Like, teams do know how to limit us, and we've had to evolve and move on around that. But yeah, we knew what kind of game it was going to be. After the first 10 minutes, I kind of thought, after the take out the offside Isak goal, but I kind of thought, all right, we're trying, but you could just see like the gaps and the danger, and that we were playing into their hands from the first 5 minutes. And we can break that down today, but that was very un-Arsenal for me.
Yeah, my biggest kind of takeaway, sort of, and I said this on the match day reaction bit over on Patreon. Check those out, by the way, if you want match day reaction to every single Arsenal game. You can sign up to us on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/The Chronicles of Aguna. Cheeky little plug there. But what I'm trying to say is, I looked at the way we were playing yesterday in that first sort of 20 minutes or so, and I just felt like we were so vulnerable. Like, it was so easy to just drop a ball into a channel, split our centre halves, and have us on the back foot. And I understand that when you are throwing lots and lots of bodies forward late on in a game where you're desperate for a goal. Let's say it was 0-0, or we were 1-0 up after, 70 minutes, and we started to overcommit in search of that goal that we needed, and then we were leaving spaces as a consequence. You kind of accept that, and you go, well, the risk is this, but the reward potentially is that. So I don't mind us being a little bit more exposed. You just accept that that's the way things work. Yesterday, in that first 20 minutes especially, it felt like we were taking all of the risk in terms of our defensive shape, but with none of the reward that sort of performance or that sort of mentality should bring. We weren't creating chances. We weren't doing anywhere near enough in the final third. We weren't creating overloads because they had so many bodies back, etc., etc. Yet defensively, we looked as though we were throwing the kitchen sink at the game. And the two things for me just didn't marry up. It was really difficult to make sense of.
Well, there was the Odegaard chance. Yeah, I kind of see where you're coming from. I think because we're used to seeing us so risk averse, it was kind of a massive shock to see us commit so many bodies forward. I mean, looking at the pitch, it was Miles Lewis-Skelly was more advanced than we've seen him. Yuri Timber was doing that on the same side. And the only players that were left back were Thomas Partey, Saliba and Gabriel. And they were, well inside their own, inside Newcastle's half. So it just made it really, really, really easy for them to attack, because all they had to do was play one ball out, get the ball to Gordon or Tonali, and try and find Isak or try and find Gordon in behind it. There was basically like a 2v2 every time. And that is not a situation that we're used to seeing. So I think that's why it looks so stark. Obviously, the big moment is that Odegaard chance. I think if that goes in and it makes it 2-1, the tie does look different, because I think the atmosphere in the ground changes.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it is. I think we've got a mental block, really, when we go there, because we just saw some performances as a team, but on an individual basis that we're not used to seeing. Like I know the commentators ripped us to shreds, and Gary Neville had a huge smile on his face, I'm sure, watching that unfold. But you know, he was right in saying that William Saliba looked frazzled. Gabriel was jumping into tackles, you know, getting involved with Kieran Trippier. At this stage where we are right now, I think we've kind of got to be above that. And I don't agree with the approach, because I agree with you. I think if we get to the second half and, you know, we're doing our usual thing of playing it safe, playing it side to side, relying on set pieces, but you get to the 60th minute and it's still 2-0, you're in the game. At least you're in the game and you can try and build something. You know, you might get a goal from a set piece. There might be a momentary lapse, you know, from a defender, from their 10 defenders. It might just happen. But the way we approached it, which is so on Arteta, and like I say, so on Arsenal, which is why I was so surprised.
I had said in the lead up to the game that we needed to take control early on. And I know it's much easier said than done, right? It's easy to say, go to St. James's Park and dominate them and don't let the atmosphere get to you and block it all out and all of that. I realized that the reality is very, very different to the theory. But I wanted to see Arsenal go there and just put their foot on the ball. And even if it was Arsenal knocking the ball from side to side, like we've been frustrated with in recent sort of months on numerous occasions, but it meant just taking this thing out of Newcastle, I was fine with that. And then we come back, though, to this point, Mike, of efficiency, because not only did we not take control of the game or the ball, I know this possession stats show that we did, but, you know, you can have possession for 5 minutes. Newcastle only needed it for 30 seconds and they were at your goal. And so efficiency, I think, is the overriding point here. But it just felt like we never settled. We never took the sting out of the game. In the early stages, we allowed the St. James's Park atmosphere that was always going to be good from the beginning because of the occasion, but we allowed it to fester and to develop into something more than it probably even was at kickoff, because we gave them encouragement. And the minute we started to get a little bit of a hold in the game and we created that Martin Odegaard chance, we go and concede down the other end. I just want to share a screenshot. Obviously, I can't play the clip because of copyright reasons, but I just wanted to share sort of how the Alexander Isak offside goal came about, because I thought this was a massive warning sign for us. Like it was, and we talk a lot, don't we, about not getting caught out, not getting caught in possession, making sure that we're transition resistant, which I think is one of the things that, if you're speaking generally, Mikel Arteta's team have been quite good at. But just have a look at this for a minute, right? This is when the ball breaks to Tonali. Now, Isak at that point is in an offside position. I got to be honest, right? I know the technology found him to be offside. I don't trust that technology. I think it's crap. And I think if you had the semi-automated offsides, A, you'd have got it done a lot quicker, and B, maybe the outcome would have been different. I don't know. But you just look at this. Look at Saliba and Gabriel.
Yeah,
they are completely exposed. And for those of you listening on audio, I'll try my best to explain what the picture looks like. Newcastle got pretty much everyone behind the ball, barring Anthony Gordon, who's like, 3 yards ahead of it, and Alexander Isak, who's on that far side, just off the shoulder of Gabriel. Rice has pushed forward. Partey's committed himself. The two fullbacks are in the opposition half, and the distance, especially between Timber and Saliba, is just massive.
Massive.
It's huge, right? It's huge.
Yeah.
And then obviously, I can't share with you guys the video, but you take it on just a second or so, and they're in behind us. And I thought we were incredibly lucky to get away with that, because, as I say, I'm not convinced, by the way, that technology is accurate enough to make big decisions and big calls like that. But Alexander Isak's finish on top of that was just outstanding.
It's absolutely ridiculous. Like it deserved the goal in a way, because it was so marginal. I actually was, to be honest, in that moment, I was praising Gabriel for his reaction, because he does the whole Neo from Matrix dodging bullets kind of move, and he shapes his body just like, obviously we don't have the why didn't they show the image till like 10 minutes later, by the way? I think that's so crap from a viewer experience.
100%.
I mean, we didn't care because it went for us, but like at least show us why you've made that decision. It's a shambles, and as I said, you're right. It's all about defensive line which was completely out of kilter. And beyond that, it's the gaps between the centre backs and then the centre backs and the full backs. And that was all wrong. And as you can see from that clip, like I was saying earlier, there's not a lot of Newcastle attackers. There's Gordon in that picture. There's Isak making the run, and then there's Tonali, I think, winning the ball. That's not a lot to contend with, because we know that they were set up so defensively. So I think that's the part that's really frustrating. It's that they've not played some amazing football to cut us open. It's one or two, quick, direct balls through that's completely destroyed us. Another thing we're not used to seeing, Gabriel and Saliba losing duels. Alexander Isak is no Erling Haaland. Yeah, okay, I think he's maybe surprisingly strong because he does look a little bit, I guess, skinny. Like he's not the stockier striker. So you would expect, Saliba and Gabriel to bully him, but I think he was just a bit sharper on the day. Like I think for the first or second, I can't exactly remember because I was very upset. But it's a sort of one-on-one with Saliba and Isak. And Isak, he doesn't use his body. He uses his body, but he flicks it with his foot. And you just kind of think, like, Saliba's always getting to that 99% of the time against any striker. So there was something about his mindset that just wasn't quite right. Maybe it was the pressure. Maybe it was the occasion. Maybe it was the atmosphere. Who knows? But it was tough. It was a tough night.
Yeah, it was, and the way the second goal developed is very, very similar. Again, a situation where Arsenal again have sort of committed to going and aggressively trying to win the ball, but not everybody's in sync. You look at the image again. I'll explain it a little bit for those listening on audio. You've got William Saliba trying to keep tabs on Alexander Isak, who's already stolen a yard on him and is in a position to beat him. Saliba's quick across the ground. Alexander Isak is deceivingly quick too. Thomas Partey's gone out to confront Anthony Gordon. He's nowhere near getting there. He's way too late to the party. And Gabriel is like 5 yards deeper than the rest of the defensive line. And he's got a player over the back of his shoulder. So he's probably a little bit concerned about that and got caught in two minds. It's just everything and everybody seemed so out of sync. And that is so uncharacteristic for this Arsenal side. So all of that's gone wrong at the back. And as a forward sort of thinking team, we've got nothing either. That one Odegaard chance is pretty much all we created. There was the Trossard one as well. I thought that was a much tougher chance than people sort of made out at the time. Like Trossard coming across the ball like that, he's got to just hit the target. He does that. It's not a great save. It's a save I expect the keeper to make. But, we just didn't offer anywhere near enough going forward. But defensively, we were all over the place. And it was way too easy. And if I just take this on ever so slightly, because there's a point I want to make here. And this is what I think is so good about Alexander Isak and why I'd love him to come to Arsenal, right? Just have a look at this here. This is when he's received the ball and gone beyond William Saliba, right? And he's on the edge of the box. Saliba is closing in on him. He is eating up the ground, William Saliba. Any other striker, I think, takes another touch and gives William Saliba the chance to either nick the ball or get in a position to dictate the angle from which he gets the shot off. And the goalkeeper, obviously, with another touch from the striker, gets a chance to set himself and either show him sort of back across the goal or make sure he protects his near post. The beauty of this from Alexander Isak, and I hate sitting here waxing lyrical about opposition players, especially after they've just beaten us. But the beauty here of what Alexander Isak does is he's so confident, even on his weaker foot. He just takes it on early. Like, he just takes it on early. He doesn't give Saliba the chance to get back. He doesn't give David Raya the chance to set himself. He just bends it around the outside of the goalkeeper. Obviously, it comes off of the post. But again, we're asleep at the far post because Gabriel has got no idea by the looks of things that Jacob Murphy is there. The deflection off the post, it puts it in Murphy's path. I don't think that Gabriel could have done a great deal about it because of the angle of the deflection. But at the same time, it's clear to me there that he's got no idea where he is. And Miles Lewis-Skelly, who I love, is way off in terms of getting back and supporting. So it's just a culmination of errors, isn't it? It's just a culmination of problems that have led to us ending up in this situation where, for me, at this point, the tie was over.
Yeah. Do you blame the approach then? Do you think the approach was wrong? Because I'm very much in the camp of, we approached it the first 10 minutes like it was the last 10 minutes. And for me, keep yourself in the game. Don't expose yourself too much. We know they're going to be defensive. We know they're going to look to counter us because they do that anyway when it's 0-0 in games against us. So I think we played into their hands. I think we could have approached it slightly differently. There was probably an element of, we've not got an FA Cup game this weekend. Let's go hell for leather. Because that's what I was thinking before. I was kind of like trying to trick myself into thinking maybe we've got a chance here because Newcastle got an FA Cup game. Not the toughest opposition, but they'll be thinking, all right, we've got to be back on the training pitch tomorrow or the next day. That's something. It doesn't matter level of opposition. That's something in your mind that you have to do. We knew that we were having a break. I think they're going to Dubai. I'm not sure if that's been confirmed or not.
Yeah, they are. Yep.
They're going to Dubai. It's not a holiday, but again, it's not being in miserable old England. But they know they're going to have a break. So they thought, go for this, 100% hell for leather, leave everything out there. And I just think they missed it. They missed the brief. And I'm sure that was an instruction because I'd never see us play like that. But I don't think it was executed anywhere near as to the level Arteta would have wanted to see what he asked for. Because the least you can do is win your duels, try and be efficient, although that's not always possible, and just be ruthless. And we were none of those things.
See, I slightly disagree. I think that when you look at the evidence of what Mikel Arteta has done in the past, and you look at his body of work over the last couple of years, I think the idea that Arsenal, knowing what a difficult place that is to go, by the way, we're going to go out and just go for it and risk losing the tie against a side that they know are very capable on the counter-attack. And I might be wrong, right? You might be completely right, and I might be 100% wrong. I don't know. But in my head, it just doesn't work. That equation doesn't work. It feels to me like we went out with the intention of being semi-pragmatic Arsenal, which meant that we would try and control the game and create chances that we needed, but maybe, we didn't have to force the issue in the first minute. We could have allowed it to run. I just think that they didn't let us settle. I think we struggled to settle down. We struggled to get a foothold of the game, and they turned the game into exactly what they wanted it to be, which was fast, frantic, physical, because Newcastle can't match us footballing wise. But they can certainly match us physically, and they've got two wonderful attackers. Murphy was good as well and has been good for a little while, but Gordon and Isak are the two standouts, right? I just think that they set up in a way where they wanted to get in our faces, they wanted to rile us up, and they wanted us to lose all the composure that you normally associate with this Arsenal team. And we fell into the trap. And we lost control of the game. So my view is that it wasn't deliberate that we went out hell for leather. I think we might have seen a shift to that later in the game had it panned out in a certain way. But I think we just lost control, both mentally, physically. We were losing duels, we were losing battles, and it all became too frantic. The spaces that we were trying to defend became too big. We were putting a lot of reliance on Saliba and Gabriel, coping with not only two incredibly talented attackers, but with gaping holes and massive spaces as well. And we just asked too much of people, because for me, our game plan, if it is what I think it was, just completely went out of the window after like 10 minutes when we realized the kind of heat of the battle that we were in.
Yeah, but the only thing I'll say to that, Harry, is that, like, look at those images that you sent. When did Arsenal ever push that many bodies forward? It just doesn't happen. Miles Lewis-Skelly, excuse me, is a fantastic player, but he never pushed up that high. That's a Ricardo Calafiori thing. So when you're talking about Saliba and Gabriel being isolated, it's because there's no cover. And I think both those goals, the offside one and the Jacob Murphy one, were all to the right-hand side. So if you'd said, okay, either Miles Lewis-Skelly or you're in Timber, one of you stay back like they usually do, invert next to Thomas Partey, I think you've got a bit more protection there. But I think because we didn't see that and we saw them both flying forward, I think that was an instruction. But I do agree that we did lose control. I mean, the fact that Martin Odegaard was having to, be the first receiver because we were under so much pressure. Gabriel and Saliba didn't look like they were able to cope at that moment. that is obviously a sign that you're panicking a bit and you need to try and take control. And that was good that he did that. But as you say, like, I think it was hell for leather. The hell for leather didn't work because we only had 3 shots on target. That was the same as them. And we only had, 11 shots versus their 10. They were the one that were in the lead in the game. They didn't need to come out and play. And the fact that we had that, territorial dominance, but couldn't convert that into anything. I mean, look, that's a bigger issue. I think this, lack of spark up front, whatever it may be, is an issue. Our inability to convert chances. We've spoken about that all year. I think that is a problem. And I think it's a stylistic thing as much as a personnel thing.
I agree. I agree though, Mike, about converting chances. But did we create enough?
Yeah. No.
So have we been throughout this entire period where we've been sitting here going, we need a striker, and I agree that we do need a striker, right? I was very vocal on that. We needed one in the window, we didn't get one. Whatever. We'll move on to that in a bit. But what's the good in having a striker if you don't create chances? Like, it's not like we missed a whole bunch of chances last night. We didn't. We had, and I put this tweet out, right, at 9:50, right? So it was 87 minutes into the game. I said, teams have off nights. It happens. But please, I don't want to hear that we dominated them because we had 68% of the possession.
No, you're right. You're right.
2 attempts on target at that point, and defensively, we were all over the place. Where was the domination?
I mean, but this is my point. This is why I think sometimes it is stylistic because, and look, this will be for a multitude of reasons, but, Kai Havertz has to do a lot. Like, he's asked a lot in his role. He has to win the aerial duels. He has to chase things down. He has to, pulls out into wide areas. I think sometimes just let him be a bit of a penalty box striker, or we bring someone in, because I think sometimes when I watch him, I don't know if you agree with this, but he does so much work that when he gets the ball, in the middle of the pitch, he looks knackered. Like, he looks, and that could be a consequence of him having to play every minute this season. But it also could be we're asking a bit too much. So do we need to, convert him into being a bit more of a presence in the box, a bit of a target man, a bit of a poacher, rather than having to be all encompassing? Because I just think that is stunting us a little bit. Especially because we're not scoring the goals from wide areas. Like, it's just not coming. And that's because Saka's not there, yes. But from the left-hand side, I don't think we have much threat, if at all. So I think it's all like a combination of reasons, but mostly it's just we're just slightly off in attack. It's just slightly, but it needs to be rejigged for me.
Yeah, I think we're off in attack as a collective. And it's mad to say that because we put 5 past Manchester City on Sunday, but these issues have sort of cropped up so many times over the course of the season. I think it's a valid conversation. And somebody said to me after the Manchester City game, a friend of mine, why can't we play like that every week? And I was like, well, because not everybody comes and plays us that way. Manchester City are front-footed, right? They weren't going to come and park the bus. That's not the way they play. They were going to try and play with a high line like we do. They were going to try, because of their injuries, in particular to Rodri, they were always going to have to play a slightly less combative but more technical midfield, and we were able to dominate them physically and get the upper hand there. But I just, the thing with Havertz, and the thing that really annoys me is that he will be the scapegoat for last night. When you look back at the game, and I did sort of this morning, admittedly, I fast forwarded through large periods of it because it was shit, to be honest with you. But like, I can't remember him being served up a load of goal scoring opportunities that he spurned. And you know why I can't remember it? Because it didn't happen. There were times where we were trying to create in the wide areas, and you talked about the doubling up, and you're absolutely spot on. That is the way that teams have sort of figured us out. Go and double up, force Arsenal to go around the outside of you rather than ever being allowed to come on the inside. You kind of create this sort of like semicircle shaped shield around your penalty area and just force them wide. And I thought Jamie Carragher did some good analysis on that not that long ago. But then how do you create the overload in those wide areas to help out those wide players if Havertz doesn't go? Because if you send Odegaard one way and you send Rice the other way, you leave the central midfield player exposed. So is it a case of we need to stop thinking about trying to create the overload in the wide areas and instead try and create the overload in the more central areas? And is that the way to do it? I don't know. It feels like our default is always to go wide, and we haven't really got much in those areas at the minute. And as a result, we're not providing much for anyone really who we would put in that centre forward position.
Well, our whole game is based on wide play, and it has been, for a long time. And the problem is when you don't have those lethal attackers that can create something from nothing, you're struggling. And obviously we're missing Saka, so we're seeing that right now. So yeah, I think it's definitely a valid point. Where I think Havertz is slightly off is I don't think he's that kind of target man striker, like a sort of Isak or like a sort of Harry Kane who can play with his back to goal. And in Arsenal terms, a bit like an Olivier Giroud. You could ping it to him, he's gonna have a solid touch, he's gonna back his defender, he's gonna lay it off. I don't think Havertz is that kind of guy, so I think that stops us playing centrally. And obviously playing centrally is more difficult, you don't have as much space. So I think, look, it's a fine theory when you want to go wing play, but then it's also reliant on not just double ups in terms of Odegaard and Rice, but double ups on fullbacks. And that's what Ben White did so well. That's why that right-hand trio was so effective, Saka, Odegaard and Ben White, because we shifted our play. We said, we're not worried about the left-hand side as much. We're going to make teams worry about this deadly combo. They had the familiarity. And I actually think, and one of my colleagues at The Athletic did a good piece on this, what worked well against City, and you're right, there was a lot more space, but we started to see a bit of a trio between Miles Lewis Skelly, Leandro Trossard and Declan Rice. And that is a surprise because we've not fed down that side before. So it just shows that, like, with a bit of familiarity, because they have played a bit together recently, that can start to build, but we've not built ourselves for that style of play. So it's just about, I think, going back to the drawing board a little bit and trying to find that innovation, because as we said recently, last year after the Dubai trip, so this is good timing, we moved Havertz from midfield to attack. So what's going to be the innovation this year? We probably can't do it because of personnel. Like, what could he do really, realistically, that you could say, let's try this and that? Because we're down to bare bones. So it's a really tricky situation, but you can't say that it's not one of our own doing.
Yeah, and we'll always go back to the window, won't we? We'll always go back to the window and say we needed to add and we didn't. And the thing that I think makes this window more frustrating than others is that Mikel Arteta was so clear in his desire to bring in an attacker. And so then if the club haven't done it, and I know, look, I subscribe to the idea that you shouldn't just bring in anyone, because I think that, and I said it on a recent episode that we did, Arsenal have got to this point because they've built well and over time, and they've been patient and brought the right players in. That's why they're in a position now where we're expecting them to win trophies, we're expecting them to compete, etc., etc. But at the same time, sometimes strategy has to be parked. Sometimes you have to look at the situation you find yourself in currently and recognize the need to act. And we just haven't done that. Now, I would have understood them going, our player's not available that we want, but this could be a short-term solution. We should have at the very least done a short-term deal, and we haven't done any of it. And now we've lost Martinelli as well, sod's law, a couple of days after the window closes. Yep. And look, listen to what the noise is going to be now. And I can't sit here and defend Arsenal from that noise because they've brought that on themselves. And I just want to look at the second goal very, very quickly because, again, we'll share a screenshot. This is kind of in the lead up to it, I think. This is in the lead up to the Anthony Gordon chance where he ends up going through the goalkeepers in no man's land, whatever. I know we're a goal down at this point, so we're having to take risks. But again, we're leaving Gabriel and Saliba on the halfway line with no support anywhere near them. And we are asking them to cope with two of the best attacking players in the Premier League. If you're a striker, if you're an attacker, and you and your mate with whom you've got an incredible understanding get a 2v2, you are rubbing your hands together. Yeah. That's exactly what you want. Yet we've managed to hand them this and this situation over and over and over again. If I take it a little bit further forward, Saliba is indecisive. And we can talk about the tactics and we can talk about the system and we can talk about the shape. But there was indecision throughout the Arsenal team yesterday. This is him when he brings the ball under control. Where are you going? Yeah. Where are you turning? Alexander Isak has cut off your pass to Gabriel. Anthony Gordon is within 3 yards of you. Where are you going, man? Roll it back to David Raya. Where are you turning into? You're turning into trouble. And then obviously, he ends up losing the ball. The situation develops. Gordon pinches it. Raya's in some strange position to the left of the penalty box because he was trying to provide an angle for Gabriel should he receive the ball, and he gets the shot off. Then, right, before we talk more about transfers and all the rest of it and sort of summarize our feelings on this, because I need to touch on the second goal. I think it's so important that we do that, because look at how the situation starts. And again, if you're listening, I'll explain what it looks like for those of you that haven't had the chance to watch it back. So David Raya's got the ball in his penalty spot. Okay, his two centre halves are split, as they do. Both of them are having the path to them blocked off by, you've guessed it, Anthony Gordon and Alexander Isak. Fabian Schär, a centre back, has been tasked with going and following Declan Rice. He's followed Declan Rice all the way back into the Arsenal man's defensive third. Okay, what on earth goes through a goalkeeper's mind when he decides to play this pass? Like, so at the time I've paused it now, Raya's in control. Rice isn't showing for the ball, I would say. He's sort of jogging away from it. He doesn't make a dart towards the ball, right? Just watch this little thing develop. I think I could get away with just playing a few seconds. You know what? I don't care if it, whatever. I think I can get away playing a few seconds. Watch Declan Rice's body shape here, yeah? Declan Rice is not showing for this ball. Okay, hold on. Yeah. Declan Rice is reacting to Fabian Schär going. He's not gone, Declan Rice, oh, give me the ball. He's not dropped into that position and pointed down at his feet to David Raya to say, give me the ball. He's realised that Fabian Schär is going and he's trying to block him. He's trying to block Fabian Schär.
So is Raya misread that then, do you think?
Completely. Yeah. Completely. And when you're a goalkeeper and you can see the entire field in front of you, for me, there's no excuse to make that type of mistake. There's no excuse whatsoever. Launch it long. Play it safe. Look at on the near side of our picture. Look at the room that Miles Lewis Skelly's in. Clip it out there and back.
Is the reason because I felt like, Harry, that because obviously in this situation you can clip it, but like say if he clips it to one of the fullbacks, you're immediately under pressure. And I think maybe it was an instruction to say, look, we're under fire here. This is a tough place. You don't want to do that. But then I also felt there was a reluctance to go long because Havertz wasn't winning any of his duels. And I don't know what's happened to him. And maybe this is a wider point, but it feels like he's not able to win those aerial duels as much. And it feels like, as a consequence, we're not hitting him as much. And again, I don't know whether that's a tiredness issue, but it felt like about 6 months ago, last season particularly, it felt like he could win a lot more of those aerials. And we can look into the numbers for this of aerials won. I'll do that in a second. But it just feels like that number's dropped massively. And when you don't have that outlet, that limits you. So maybe that's why, I'm not excusing it. It's absolutely dreadful. You summed up very well. But maybe that's why in his mind, he's thinking, I have to go short here.
Yeah, maybe. I just think that when you watch it back, and I watched it back a couple of times last night, it's very, very clear that Declan Rice does not want that ball.
Yeah,
he's not asking for it. He's not asking for it. He's not showing for it in any way, shape, or form. He has, when Raya's got the ball and Gordon's gone and Isak's gone, that's a trigger for Fabian Schär to try and go as well and to really put some pressure on Arsenal. And you know, Declan Rice, his action is clearly him trying to step in front of Fabian Schär and stop him getting there. It's not about receiving the ball. And so because he's leaning in, you give it to him off balance, he's going to lose out. And Newcastle United get their reward in their second goal, which ultimately puts them in the final. On the Havertz point that you're making about the long balls, I kind of agree with you. It doesn't feel like we're getting as much joy out of that situation, but I'd be interested to see the numbers because I in my own head can't work out if it's that.
I've got it here.
Go on.
So this season in the Premier League, he's won an average of 3 per game, and that puts him in the top 14% versus forwards, which is quite good, to be fair.
Yeah.
But it feels like 3 per game with the amount of long balls that we play, I think is probably not quite up to scratch. So yeah, I mean, look, it's not a definitive number, but just from the eye, it looks like it's dropped off
So
to me.
So what I was going to say was I can't work out if it's Kai Havertz not winning those duels anymore, or if it's that we're not responding to the second balls. Like, are we not getting people close enough to him to
Yeah,
get onto the flick-ons? Because I've seen him on numerous occasions this season flick stuff on, and no one's made the running
yeah.
behind him. I've
So
seen him
this
do
is
that.
this is interesting because aerials one is just a straight number
Yeah,
per 90, but if you look at percentage of aerials one per 90, that's 45%, which is obviously, that's a lot lower, and that puts him in the 67th percentile. So that kind of gives you a bit of an indication that's in the Premier League this season.
yeah,
And I'm sure those stats would have been higher last season. But I think, look, inevitably, all roads lead to transfers. So we're gonna have to talk about that at some point. I think if Kai Havertz wasn't knackered, we'd be seeing a better player right now. And
yeah.
I think that's an obvious thing to say.
Let's finish off on transfers then. I don't really want to go over this traumatic experience of a game much more. I think we've highlighted and covered the key moments and the key incidents in it. I've said it before. I'll say it again very, very briefly and let you share your kind of take on this. But the decision to not bring someone in, even in a short-term deal, was baffling to me. People say it's not about bodies, and people say it's not about just bringing people in for the sake of it. And again, I'll make the point once more. I kind of generally believe that is the correct way to do things. But I also think that you have to play the game that you face in front of you rather than allow it to play you. And it feels like we're in a situation where we've had all this rotten luck with injuries. You could say it's rotten luck. Some people would argue that Bukayo Saka's gone down because he's been overworked. And, some people would argue that Martinelli's done his hamstring last night because he's played too much football and been asked to do too much work. All of that correlates, of course, in some way. But I just feel like we had an opportunity to just give the squad a little bit more help. And it was never about, for me, bringing in a shiny new toy of a signing that I could get excited about. I said it over and over again. We had to protect Kai Havertz. We have to protect the other forwards from burnout, from being over-relied upon, and from the criticism and stick that will come their way if the team doesn't deliver, with them being solely responsible for our attacking output. And here we are in a mess. Another attacker down. It's just not acceptable, is it really?
No. And look, I think you can split it into two different things. I think it's understandable they've not gone for their top target or one of their top targets in attack. Obviously, there was lots of chat about Ollie Watkins. I was sat here last week, really excited about the prospect of us signing him, and then it didn't happen. But I guess in retrospect, I can understand why the club didn't want to drop in excess of 60 million on a 29-year-old. They don't see it as someone they can get sell-on value for. I mean, I disagree with that personally, because I think we are in that stage now where we just need the finished products, and we need someone who's going to offer us a guarantee of 15, 20 Premier League goals.
This is the point, though, isn't it, Mike? Like, it's like, yes, okay, the investment might not make total sense, but it's not just about the resale value, is it? It's about what it gives you on the pitch now in your bid to achieve what you want to achieve.
And the club won't, they do things in a certain way. And that's their prerogative. But then if that is the reason, and obviously we don't know, but if that is the reason they've not gone for Watkins and paid what Villa wanted, then why did they sign Mikel Merino? Because he's 28 years old. He's not got much resale value, and he's been not great. I could use a worse term there, but I went for not great. So that doesn't really add up. I know obviously it's a cheaper deal, blah, 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 but we need attacking reinforcements. And then the other thing is, as you say, in order to just protect what we have and not make sure this season spirals and, peters out, we had to bring in an attacker to just give these guys a rest. Because now, if Martinelli is out for an extended period, we're having to rely on a 17-year-old to play at right wing, which is just not that's not really acceptable, to be honest. And I know he's fantastic, and we're lucky that he's fantastic and he's ready, like Miles is. But that's not a situation you want to find yourself in when you're in a title challenge. Could you ever imagine Liverpool having to rely on one of their teenagers to cover for Salah? Because basically, Saka is our Salah. It just wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen. So it's really disappointing. I don't know why they couldn't get a deal done. I don't know what the reasoning behind it is, but purely from a standpoint of the health of our players, they had to get someone, and they haven't. Like they might say that we've got Raheem Sterling, but I'm not even going to try and attempt to answer that one because it's just it's obvious he's not up to it.
Exactly. Just very, very quickly before we finish up, the Dubai trip is happening, and I've seen a few prominent Arsenal voices on social media this morning being very critical of that. Should you reward failure, etc., etc.? I don't see it in quite that way. I don't know how you see it, but I see this trip as a necessity rather than a luxury or a reward. I think they need some warm weather. I think they need to recover. I think they need to re-energize ahead of what's going to be a really grueling period, especially given that we've not been able to reinforce the squad in the way that we wanted to, at least that we wanted to. I don't know what they wanted to do because it feels like they were being really picky and fussy. But yeah, how do you see the Dubai trip? Is it kind of bad PR after a result like that?
Well, firstly, I'm jealous because you were lucky enough to get away to Cyprus for a few days. I was not, so I need some warm weather. You can hear from my voice.
Sitting in the sunshine, though.
Yeah, you can hear from my voice. I've been ill for about 6 weeks. I need some sun, man. I need some vitamin D. Now, I mean, what struck me when I looked at the calendar was that they're going on this Dubai trip, but they're only going to be there for a few days because they've got a game next Saturday. So it's not like they've got a complete gap. So hopefully it can have some sort of impact. Obviously, last year when it happened, it was just one of those things that happened, and it was very fortunate, I guess, in the way that it turned out, and we performed afterwards. Went on this mad run. I'm not going to expect the same results, frankly, because I think it was a bit of a freak thing that happened. I mean, maybe warm weather, bit of bonding, bit of rest, maybe a bit of time on the training ground to try something new, a slight tweak might help. But yeah, I can't see it being a complete transformational thing like it was last season, sadly.
Yeah, agreed. Right, we are going to leave it there. I'm sick and tired of talking about last night, to be quite frank. Thank you all so much for joining us, Mike. Let people know where they can follow you and how they can keep up to date with all your brilliant work.
Yeah, Blue Sky, Mike Stavrou, and then follow the whole Athletic network. We've got podcasts on most of the big clubs and just about everything else, really. So yeah, check us out.
Brilliant stuff. Make sure you do. Don't forget to leave a like if you're watching us on YouTube, to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And if you're listening on any of the audio platforms, Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or the likes, make sure that you leave us a review. All of that stuff really, really does help. We'll be back soon with another episode. There's lots to get into over the next few days in terms of analysis and looking back at maybe the season so far, given we've got this kind of mini break at the minute. I won't be in Dubai. I'll be here making podcasts. So we'll bring you as much content over the next few days to keep you occupied as we can. Thank you all so much, and I'll see you all on the next one. Until then, take care of yourselves. Have a great day. Goodbye.